Good morning. Hi, my name is Ömer. Thank you very much for coming out to listen to my talk. Today I'm going to present you an offensive network security research related to the nation-state attacks targeting telecommunication networks. Just briefly, what we are going to cover is introduction to the telco network architecture, network protocols that are being highly targeted, such as GRX network architecture and SS7 protocol. And the main concern of this talk is one of the most credited government implants, region malware. Before delving into its capabilities, I will try to briefly remind you rootkit techniques, as region is a multi-component long-term intelligence gathering rootkit. Afterwards, we will browse through the region capabilities, and then we will analyze how it could be weaponized in an offensive GSM network hacking. As recently there are more technically complex implants discovered by the researchers, we will briefly make a comparison. And finally, I will present you a demo, show how some of the techniques employed by the region implant could be re-implemented by a high-level programming language such as Windows Driver Kit and Win API programming. So my academical background is computer science. I'm currently working for the KPN Telecom's Red Team. I used to work for companies like Verizon and IBM ISS. I perform security assessments on my day-to-day work, and I'm very interested in malware analysis and rootkit techniques and programming development. This is Red Team. We are based in Amsterdam, and it is only 6 minutes ride from the Amsterdam center. What inspired us to carry out this research was to analyze and determine attack surfaces of the GSM and inner GSM networks. Governments not only hacking their own students, but spy on each other by covert hacking operations with tools like region and stealth malwares. Surveillance programs reach a crazy level. Recent leaks confirm that the network devices, telecom networks, are the victims or the contributors of such programs. Once region hacking campaign revealed, pretty much each and every telecommunication company got paranoid and tried to make sure that they haven't been affected to the same or the similar attack. Rootkits require a lot to learn about, especially the operating system internals, kernel working principles, and computer architecture. I'm sure not only understanding the incident, but also to be able to reproduce and simulate the attack would mean a lot to the doers whose day-to-day work is to break systems. GSM network architecture is very complex. However, let's try us to break it down under the following core elements. GPRS is an extension of GSM network that provides mobile, wireless, and data communications. UMTS is Universal Mobile Telecommunication System, an extension of GPRS. Networks that moves towards all IP network by delivering broadband information, including commerce, entertainment services, to mobile users via fixed, wireless, and satellite networks. UMTS defines interfaces for the radio network controllers. A GSM network consists of the following network components: mobile station, base transceiver station, base station controller, base station subsystem, mobile switching center, authentication center, home location register, and visitor location register. From a security perspective, the following components are important to the researchers. Mobile switching center. The mobile switching center is the digital ISDN switch that sets up the connection other mobile switching centers to the base station controllers. Mobile switching centers form the wired fixed backbone of the GSM network that can switch calls to the public and switch telecommunication networks known as PSTNs. Equipment Identity Register is a database that stores international mobile equipment identities known as IMEI of the mobile stations network. The IMEI is the equipment identity identifier assigned by the manufacturer of the mobile stations. The equipment identity register provides security features such as blocking calls from handsets that have been stolen. And another important component is the home location register. Is the central database for all users to register GSM network. It stores static information about the subscribers, such as international mobile subscriber identity, subscribed services, and a key for authenticating subscriber. The HLR also stores dynamic subscriber information such as current location of the mobile subscriber. Authentication center, on the other hand, associated with the home location register. An authentication server is the database contains algorithms for authenticating subscribers and the necessary keys for encryption to safeguard user input for the authentication. Visitor Location Register, known as VLR, is a distributed database also and temporarily stores information mobile stations that are active in geographic area for which VLR is responsible for. A VLR is associated with each mobile switching center in the network. When a new subscriber roams into your location area, the VLR is responsible for copying subscriber information from HLR to the local database. Very simple words. VLR is your database that stores your information at your home country, and HLR is responsible for this, and VLR is responsible of copying your data. For example, when you visit abroad, your phone switches into the roaming mode, so it needs to copy this information, and regardless of your location, your phone is always working and generating signal. So these databases are responsible for this communication and authentication. GSM uses various interfaces for communications among its network elements. Communications also occur over the interfaces management databases. These databases are HLR, VLR, Authentication Center, and Equipment Identity Register. The communication might traverse multiple mobile switching centers, but ultimately must reach the gateway, known as GMSC. A separate interface exists between each pair elements. Each interface requires own set of protocols. The network switching subsystem, known as NSS, is the heart of the GSM system. It connects wireless network to the standard wired network, and it is responsible for the hands of calls from one BSS to another to perform services such as charging, accounting, and roaming. Different signaling protocols are used interfaces. Some NSS interfaces involve only controlling signaling protocols with no traffic. For example, no traffic is generated on the interfaces between GMSC, HLR, and VLR. These interfaces carry only signaling using the mobile application part known as map of the SS7 protocol. So how these are related to our research? The region malware is specifically targeted the GSM networks, and antivirus companies say that the region has been designed to be a low-key type of malware that can potentially be used espionage campaigns lasting several years since 2008. The antivirus companies that analyzed the sample and its actions after decrypted the sample files, discovering that its actions are particularly difficult to decipher. So antivirus companies confirmed that it's high profile attacking it, and region-related stealth hacking campaigns are also confirmed by the recent leaks that hit the media. The following picture was taken in Germany. A group of activists protesting against GCHQ and NSA to get their data removed from their databases. Until now, no one has real and clear idea how the targeted GSM and other institutions were hacked. So we tried to determine attack possibility scenarios and attack surfaces. Since our competitors are high-profile organizations, our approach pretty much looked like similar to the old school techniques of North Korea to bring them knees. So in order to determine potential attack scenarios, we decided to perform a large-scale service enumeration from the base stations. For these reasons, we have passively tapped the GSM communication from a radio base station, and we greatly used the Michael Osman's passive network tapping utility in our research. We try to collect as much information as possible from the different endpoints of the 2G, 3G, and LTE communication. It also included the possible management services that were reachable from the base station from the network switches. And our research revealed that the following issues within the base stations: the absence of the physical intrusion detection systems, such as signaling intrusion, whether wiretapping happens or not, and devices can be altered or changed, and most GSM companies don't even take the possibility of it into account. And vulnerable services running accessible from the base stations, BTS, reachable from reachable management interfaces with default passwords, public-private keys, and absence of the tamper resistance and unauthorized access protection. Well, the network tapping shouldn't have possible otherwise. And improper network segmentation, inner non-routable segments of the telco company was accessible during the time I was performing the research. And core GPRS network and network subsystem could be exploitable. Since base stations are one of the most outer GSM network components, we would like to see whether it is possible to attack other inner components so that they store juice information such as authentication center, home location register, and visitor location register. If you ever perform similar assessment, you would be surprised where you can get in GSM network from the radio stations, especially if the segmentation are not correctly implemented. Let's take a look on the network components that could be targeted locally and remotely. GPRS roaming exchange acts as a hub for GPRS connections from roaming users, removing need of dedicated link between each GPRS service provider. It's a network consists of peering interconnects. The main GPRX gateways are located for Europe in Amsterdam, for Asia in Singapore. So essentially, when you travel abroad, your phone works and communicated through these your provider at home and through these infrastructure. GPRS roaming exchange interconnect networks your local GSM provider abroad. It's a trust-based and highly interconnected network made for internet sharing. And a failure of or a malicious activity would affect multiple connected machines. Multiple attack vectors are possible, not limited to the particular segment where you are originating from. GPRS tunneling protocol, known as GTP, is a group of IP-based communication protocols used to carry general packet radio service, known as GPRS, within the GSM, UMTS, and LTE networks. GTP can be decomposed into such subcomponents such as GTP-C, GTP-U, and GTP prime. GTP-C used within the GPRS core network for signaling between gateways of GPRS support the nodes known as GGSM. And GTP-U is used for carrying user data within the GPRS core network and between the radio access network to core network. GTP prime uses the same message structure such as GTP-C and GTP-U, but it has an independent function. GTP can be used with either UDP or TCP, but UDP is either recommended or mandatory. One of the most important feature GTP tunnel is that DNS on GRX used for resolving APNs. APNs is access point name, is the name of the gate for the between GPRS, 3G and 4G mobile network, and another computer network for currently access for the public internet. So we gathered all the information over the GRX tunnels. In the following, network capture is a standard GTP packet that transmit a lot of juicy information such as IMSI, subscriber network, and tunnel endpoint information. These might also be used to correlate a person's activity to the rest of the world if you have enough information. And then there is TEID, Tunnel Endpoint Identifier, is the field present in GTP-C header, and it is used for the tunnel identification known as fully qualified tunnel endpoint identifier. If you are not familiar with all these GRX network and principles, you can imagine as if your carrier reads these settings on your cell phone, then does things like determine the correct IP address to connect you to correct secure gateway, see if you need a private network like VPN. So according to the former head of the National Security Agency, Michael Hayden, he agreed the idea that the metadata, the information collected by the NSA and about cell phone and other communication that doesn't include the actual content. Can tell to the government pretty much everything about anyone they are targeting for the surveillance, often makes the actual content of the communication unnecessary. This is achieved by the advances in machine learning and artificial intelligence, make it possible to predict human behavior if enough information is provided. SS7 is a common signaling system for that transport SS7 messages over the SS7 network, which is developed in back in old days, 70s, and didn't introduce any security feature back then. And there is also SIGTRAN. SIGTRAN is a set of protocols, an extension of SS7 protocol. And defined to transport SS7 messages over IP network. And SS7 introduced following procedures such as user identification, routing, billing, and call management. And SS7 consists of following part: message transport part, MTP1, MTP2, and 3 for the physical part of the protocol, and signaling control part known as SCCP, transaction capabilities application part known as TCAP, telephony user part known as TUP, and ISDN user part known as ISUP. So some of the SS7 features include flow and control of transmitted information, traffic congestion controls, peer identity status detection, traffic monitoring and monitoring measurement. SS7 is a suite of global telecommunication protocol standards that define procedures by which network elements within the public switch telephony network exchange control information over digital signaling links between for setting up, managing, and tearing down wireline and wireless calls. Since SS7 is not application specific and works over IP, it enables multiple network elements to work together, such as you see, modems, fax, VoIP, telephony devices all together. So there are various ready-to-use tools available for SS7 network experimentations. One of them is called SS7 analysis tool. As part of the region malware attack service research, we performed a network traffic analysis over SS7 protocol as well. The experimentation revealed that it is possible to exfiltrate many, so to say, called juicy information, such as color Colino information related to their activities, their calls, such as call duration, call start and end times, and the call status. And please also remember that these are the all information, so-called metadata, information for which people are being killed. So let's browse through some of the attack scenarios over SS7 protocol. Intercepting subscriber calls. When when a subscriber registers on a switch, the subscriber profile is copied from HLR to the VLR database, home location register to the visitor location register database. So assuming an attacker managed to make changes in visitor location register, he can change parameters and fake subscriber info so that victim can be redirected to into a conference call to callee each time a conference call is made. So the attacker can listen the conference call passively, while the victim and victims are thinking that they are talking to each other, while it is a conference call and there can be one or multiple outsider listening to call. Subscriber service change attacks. By introducing a decoy VLR, visitor location register, unit to the SS7 network, an attacker can intercept SMS messages, send or drop confirmation that the message was received by the recipient. And if the victim uses mobile banking or any other service that use one-time SMS pad, then he can recover or steal password to make money transfer or take over victim accounts in a mass scale. Furthermore, the following attack scenarios are also possible. By the manipulation of visitor location register and home location register units within the SS7 networks, interception of SMS messages, interception of all outgoing calls, redirection of incoming and outgoing calls, making changes of user bills and balance. So recently, Nokia researchers discovered that it is possible to unblock stolen cell phones by exploiting a trust relationship between IMEI and IMSI for equipment identity register access. It is not applicable for all the GSM providers, but for instance, some of the GSM providers ban some of the stolen phones by looking into their IMSI number, and it's not possible to use the phone for this particular GSM provider, and it has to be done by the GSM provider. So equipment identity register simply checks whether mobile switching centers return 0 in equipment in the message called map check email message, then treats as this phone is whitelisted each time it's communication. So it grabs the database from location register and equipment identity, thinks, okay, it's a valid phone, it is not stolen, because nobody reported this phone with particular email number is stolen. So you can read more about this attack scenario, since this research related published, and the paper is on the internet and available for free. So an interesting mail log found on the WikiLeaks revealed that the hacking team, an Italian company which is known for selling weaponized surveillance tools to the oppressive governments, and are also interested in exploiting SS7 for user location tracking. And it is technically true that location of the mobile cell phone could be obtained. So rootkits can be analyzed into two categories, such as kernel and user land rootkits. When we say user land, or ring-through rootkits. We are referring executables that require at least user privileges. However, the kernel rootkits, in other words, ring-zero rootkits, run on highly privileged level of operating system. So these are also known as device drivers. So hooking is a technique for hijacking a function or a system call or changing execution flow in a way that attacker can modify, change, or obtain what is being sent. We can think that as if like pirates hijack ships where they can steal treasure and then let the ship to continue its destination if they wish to. Hooking techniques used by malicious applications to monitor user actions or application behavior, as well as legitimate applications for the same purpose. For instance, antivirus applications use hooking techniques to detect malicious behavior in the system, such as key logging, backdoors, and etc. Rootkits also use these techniques for malicious or hiding their activities within the system they infected. Most commonly known technique for user-land applications are IAT hooking, import address table hooking, DLL injections, and inline hooking. Most advanced kernel level rootkits use rather system service dispatch table hooking, IRP input output register kernel mode structures, interrupt address table descriptor, global table descriptor, and sysenter hooking techniques. Since these techniques are widely documented, available on internet, we will not delve into details, but I advise you to take a look on this. So Regin is a very complex multi-platform rootkit framework that consisted of dropper module and multi-stage user and kernel level, multi-stage user and kernel level components. So each level seemed to be responsible of decrypting and loading modules into the memory and executing them. The most interesting feature of the Regin platform was it used orchestrator that was very new to the researchers until the discovery. It can be taught as like RPC calls to specific kernel driver to enable and activate them, and then payloads that utilize for actually performing malicious actions in the system can be activated. For example, one of the most interesting malicious ability of the Regin malware was to be able to monitor GSM network base station commands. So what was the challenges of this research? No one had the dropper module. When we started the analysis, I'm referring dropper by infection method, and it is a multi-stage and encrypted framework structure, highly complex. Modules are invoked via SOA structure by the framework. Malware data are stored inside the virtual file system, and also the encryption type was RC5, so it was not commonly seen in malware implementation until that time. And research GSM network had no indication of compromise, which was good for us, for me, but it make it difficult to make further analysis. So I cooperated with a couple different GSM providers as well for further research. So we came up with a solution. To best way to analyze was to reverse engineer the encryption brain of the framework, the orchestrator part, then accompany the memory dumps of the infected system and uh, instrument calls and do dynamic analysis in that way. So we can simply simulate the region malware kernel modules within the system that we implement using Windows driver kit programming. A similar research has done by a security researcher from Russia, and it has more detailed explanation and the approach. You can take a look on the link below. So the region malware stage 1, stage 2, and 3 platform were solely responsible of the decryption of the preceding stages. So stage 1 is simply prepares execution of stage 2, which is developed as kernel module. In the snippet 1, the simply use memory kernel level calls to allocate memory pool for the stage 2, and consequently it makes sense since the proceeding next module is a kernel driver. Stage 2 had configuration block that contains name of the two system directories that hold encrypted stage 3rd in their extended attributes. So if the third stage sends a signal that stage 2 delayed the start of code of the region malware. So the second stage also creates a marker file that can be used to identify infected machine. It simply cleans the previous stage and creates encrypted file system that is used for kernel level payloads. Stage 3 is kernel driver manager, and stage 4 is a brain of the region framework that orchestrates the responsible of loading kernel modules. KE stack attack process an interesting Win API call that routine attaches current thread to the address space of target process that is found in a region sample. Since our goal was to reproduce and simulate the region functionalities and instrument the payloads to see like dynamically analyze the malware, I created a simple routine that simply attaches an application and intercepts system calls and changes them in a way we wish. And I also analyzed the rest of the malware's different kernel modules and implemented and instrumented the components in the same way. So this is very simple code snippet showing how to obtain process environment block of a process and then obtain base address of the modules and attaching a process simply executable to it. This is a comparison of among the most highly profile rootkits known as Uroboros, Regin, and Dugu2. Dugu2 seems to be most complex rootkit discovered until now, and also modules and the approach how to operate malicious actions on the targeted system change over the time. For instance, Uroboros was bypassing patch guard by a zero-day vulnerability, but Regin and Dugu2 rather used stolen or legitimate certificates to execute on the system on 64-bit systems. So in order to simulate the region behavior, I created a small framework consisting of just two modules, kernel and the user level module. It simulates the orchestrator behavior that is implanted in the region platform. And the features of the simulator include covered data exfiltration, run as a thread of the legitimate application is address space and totally invisible to the users, orchestrator simulator, and partial SOA calls, monitoring of the file system, registry, and network calls, hooking, backdoor, and keylogging module. Some of the malicious behavior that you can perform on the infected system. So demo time now. Very tiny screen. I try to see here. So my implementation consists of two modules. One is an executable here, an executable file, and then here is a driver module, device driver. And this is a simple manual infection scheme. So I haven't weaponized for the sake of simplicity and for understanding the presentation better. This is a batch file. It simply invokes the system driver on the system, runs as a kernel driver on the system, file system driver, and then it starts the service on the system and then executes the user level component of the malware. And then if an attacker connects this machine, it creates an encrypted channel, and then attacker can use the system as a command and control service. So since the rootkit is not weaponized, I will just drop these three to the directory because I hard-coded the executable in this batch file because it is not weaponized. And then I start CMD file on the system. It is not exploiting system for privilege escalation. So it is the file. Now I'm executing, in other words, infecting the system. So it creates the driver on the system, executes it, and then starts this executable on the system. And now the system is infected. And I implemented it with simple SSD table descripted hooking. So this is a utility that you can scan rootkit on your system. So it hooks some of the calls in the system and then protects binary and hide the malicious activities on your system. So as you can see, system is infected and it finds our malicious system driver on the system. And it uses some of the hooking techniques on the system, including the registry hooking. So this is the client. You can simply connect the client by providing the IP address. For the sake of simplicity, I'm running on the same system to show you, and then some of the malicious activities that the simulate system. The application run malicious activities like run commands on the system, execute URL, encrypt system like a CryptoLocker and other system, and destroy the system. For example, run command on the system. For example, these open URL on the system. And then, for example, if you want to delete these, the system will complain that it is not found. But let's say there is try to enter a file that doesn't exist on the system. It will say it couldn't found. Same, but it is running on the system. For example, it is there. So we can, for example, for the sake of simplicity, we can enter a malicious command, such like kill system. So the hard disk is overwritten. So when the victim restarts his computer, shouldn't be able to find the operating system because the start of portion of the operating system is overwritten, all the data is destroyed. So the VMware will complain soon that it couldn't find an operating system on the executing machine. Like this here. It is dark, but operating system is not found. So time for questions.
Hi, did you explore any possibility of creating your own company just for the purpose of gaining access to SS7? I'm thinking about virtual provider. You have almost nothing, and you have access to the system. Did you try this? Did you look what you need to have in order to, connect to global network?
Well, actually, I created this to use my red team exercises. So I was able to reach the inner networks of the protocol from the base stations. So I was able to reach very inner system of the GSM network. So I was able to infect systems without noticing it. Antivirus system doesn't see it, so I was able to collect pretty much any sort of data traffic. And this also has different modules that I implement in the way Region works, so I can capture some of the traffics, including SS7 related traffic, and I can filter it out, parse it, correlate it, and some of the BGP networks, and find the routes of different network traffic as well.
Were you able to get access to keys that are currently used on BTS?
Well, it is not something to do with region malware. However, it is the failure of GSM network. So I saw some of the keys, private and public keys, wrongly used and interchangeably used. Instead of public, they use private. So I was able to collect and store them.
Okay, so you were able, at some point you are able to gain access to all currently used keys from the BTS?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much.
How about in Poland? We have more strict law than in European Union pertaining to data retention, and we don't only store information when and where the connection was started and when it's ended, but we also store information between. If you are driving a car and you are switching during your way BTS, it is also logged. If you are in a roaming, I saw this in SS7 presentation. Do you have a special protocol or I don't know byte that allow you to ask the foreign operator to also gather this information, to store it and to send it to you?
Well, as I mentioned, when you travel abroad, your register database is VLR, so it takes information and it is a call like, if this identity is correct, so can I authenticate this? Who is the owner of this? And it builds in this way. So eventually your provider is responsible of what kind of data needs to be transmitted to the foreign GSM company, but of course it is limited to the some scale. So there is not much information can be disclosed, such as like your location and personal data, credit information, and etc. But it is all up to you how it is being used and data is being exchanged to the foreign GSM provider.
Okay, but to be absolutely clear, can being a Polish operator, can I ask Romanian operator for every BTS that I was logged during a particular call?
No, because it is forwarding each node to another one and then takes information for your location, for your provider and details, but you cannot obtain all the information and the location of the nodes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
You were showing the GTP communication that you eavesdropped, and what was interesting there, you showed some DNS names. What was it useful for?
Well, when you are on the GRX network abroad, you are simply using DNS names to resolve some website, right, for the public network. So it can be changed and you cannot trust it.
Okay. And regarding the SS7, you showed some analysis and there were call logs. Can this be done retrospectively, or is it the current communication that is the radio station using?
Well, it is simply similar to the Wireshark traffic dump. So.
And if someone does want to get the past information, like it was on the protest, like delete my data, is this data stored securely, or can it be obtained?
Well, I'm not working for either GCHQ or NSA, so I cannot say anything about this.
Thanks.
Other questions? No? Thank you so much for your presentation.